Hello, everyone. Now, this is week 4 already. Week 4, as we're moving right along, and this week's topic is knowing your audience. And there's two facets that we're going to get into about this. One is the statistical, the demographic information of knowing who your audience is, who our students are. And then the other is, what is their underlying goal? What is their ultimate goal? What do they want, or what do they need? And this is something that we need to think about. That it's a bit more explicit because we're teachers, but it is something to be aware of as we teach. I hope you're doing well. I'm recording this on Saturday, and so a few of your introduction videos have been submitted. Not all, but you still have time. And I wanted to use that as an example, a very nice example, actually. Now, the discussion questions or any future small quizzes we have, and the introduction video itself, these are all ways for me to, one, check comprehension, to see what you're knowing and what you're not knowing, and to get to know you better. And so I can better fine-tune the lessons and materials and future projects this semester to what you're capable of and what you're able to do, and to better challenge and improve you. So since we're not in class together, I can't do the very simple comprehension check questions like I normally like and enjoy. So the discussion questions are that, and I'm able to see how many students are following along with what I want and how many are not quite following along or are off on the wrong track entirely. And that's very helpful information to know. Very helpful. So this is part of knowing your audience, and this is an adaptation that we have that I've used so far. So far things are looking good. As I mentioned before, this week we're talking about knowing your audience. The first chunk, the big chunk, is going to be talking about the demographic information, why it's important. The second chunk is a bit smaller, talking about the underlying goals of our audience and why that's important. All right, with that, let's begin. Let's get into the main lecture of this week, and that is knowing your audience. Now, as teachers, this is something that's quite obvious and absolutely critical. You must know your audience. Your audience, of course, are your students. Now, here's the hard thing, the difficult thing with this untact learning, especially with the asynchronous untact learning. I don't know who you are, and you don't know who I am either. Leads into the problems. Now, some of us, we've had class before last semester, but we don't really know each other. Not really, no. But knowing your students, knowing who your students are, what they know, what they don't know, is quite important. So it's something that we need to be aware of when we're starting with a group of students, whether we'll have more time if we're a homeroom teacher, of course, but if we're a subject teacher, rotating students, it's important to know how the different groups of students interact, how they talk to each other, what they're good at, what they're not good at, because different classes have different personalities. Individuals, of course, have different personalities, that's very obvious, but different groups of people have different personalities. Now, this is something I miss from in-person classes, is seeing how these personalities developed. Some classes I had are very quiet. They don't talk during class. Some talk way too much. Hot diggity daffodil. And others don't. So there's different personalities, different levels of positivity or activeness levels, things like that. So another factor will be in mind. This is for all audiences, not over students, but demographic information, such as socioeconomic levels. What that means is how much money they have. And as we're public school teachers, you'll be, some of us might be going into Gangnam and teaching there, or teaching, in Songpagu where there's more money, or teaching in Bundang, places like that. Some of us might be going off to, say, Taebaek or Jungsun in Gangwon where there's less money, or up in Gosung, just north of Sokcho, up in the on the far north, closer to North Korea. Now, those students are very, very different. Yes, they're Korean students. Yes, they're the same age, but they have different experiences and different access to information, to teaching, to education, to different kinds of foods as well. And so it's things that have to be borne in mind. Education level, how much these students know. Now, with Korean elementary school students, you should, it's a fairly standard template, but not all students know the same things. That's something we're dealing with subjects, such languages such as English or other things. Some students, for example, might be native English speakers, and they're sitting right next to a boy who doesn't know any sound of English, let alone reading it. And that's a challenge I had at my previous job at Samyuk Elementary School. We had kids who they were born in Korea, and they moved to America, lived there for 8 years. Now they're coming back. They speak English perfectly, and they want to speak English because for them it's very comfortable. And their challenges are very different than the absolute beginning student who's sitting right next to them. The situation probably won't come up for you, but it might. Teaching adults, of course, at education level. I teach adults in my other works, and knowing who the adults are, their educational background, very much helps in catering to their needs. So, knowing their backgrounds. Nationality. Now, Korea is still wildly homogeneous, as in everyone has a similar background, same group. But to give a selfish example, my daughter, when she starts school, she's going to be 100% Korean, yes, and she's going to be 100% American. My wife is Korean. That's how it works out. So she'll be both, and that's happening a lot more, especially not in the cities as much, but in the rural areas. There are certain parts in Korea, in Jeollanam-do or in parts of Gangwon province as well, where you'll have schools where there are 40% or almost 50%, or some schools where there's more than 50% of the students are mixed. They're multicultural students. And that's different. That's a different challenge for you. That's a different situation. And you'll learn more details in another class about the, Damunhwa Goyuk. You'll learn about teaching multicultural kids in other parts of your educational career. But it is something to be aware of, that your references might not work with them. I'll give an example again. When it's about religion, because Samyuk Elementary School, Samyuk is a religious school. It's a kind of Christian organization. And one of the classes they have every week is religion class, Christianity with the pastor. And so I could make references to the Bible because like Noah and Noah and the whale, Abraham, Joseph, things like that, Old Testament stories that really they just help things along. But because they had that shared information, that's possible. In other schools, the students won't have that shared information, so you'll need to be aware of that. Also, age ranges. In some small schools, for example, you'll be the grades are combined. Now, when I say small schools, I mean when there's like 10 students or 7 students. So grades first and second, third and fourth, fifth and sixth will be combined. That happens. That's something to be aware of. So being careful of age ranges, and children are very sensitive about age, about who's younger and who's older. And I once made a girl cry very hard because I got her and her twin brother confused on who was older. They're twins. They're born minutes apart, 2 minutes apart, I found out. And the girl was older. She was the older sister. The boy was younger. And I got that confused. And the girl got very upset. So it's something to be aware of. Affiliations that will roll into gender, ethnicity, religion, disability, equality issues. Some of you, I have no doubt, are going to be special education, have training in that, being aware of physical disabilities and mental disabilities or ability issues. They have different words for it, but special education, we still call it that. Religion, of course, we Buddhism and Christianity are still rather dominant, but we do have non-religious students populations and a growing but small Muslim population as well in Korea, Muslim students, and so it's something to be aware of. Ethnicity, of course, still mixes in with that of multicultural students, and there are children who are not multicultural; they're just foreign, and they're in Korean public school. They don't. We might think that they would be in an international school, but we forget international schools cost money, and often a lot of money. More money than you can say it's worth. But it's quite easy to cost 10,000, 10 million won a month. So 10 million won, that, well, 천만 won. It's a lot. It's a good chunk of change every month to be spending on students. So in areas around Ansan or Hwingseong as well, and Munmak and Wonju as well, there are, I don't want to say significant, but there are existent number of students who are in the schools who are not multicultural. They have no Korean parent, but their parents are foreign workers. They're factory workers or engineers or things like that. So over the summer, I taught a boy, and he lives with his family in Goyang, and he is from Uzbekistan. And so, his mom and dad are from Uzbekistan, and his dad works for a company, and he goes to public elementary school, and he speaks Korean there, and his Korean's okay, but it is something to be aware of. Then something else, of course, and this is something that's more difficult to know about: family circumstance, marital status, children, grandchildren. This is something that slapped me in the face, metaphorically, of course, is when, what you think is the rather banal, innocent question of, oh, what does your daddy do? What work does your father do? What does your father do? What job does he have? And I was teaching at a school, and the answer was, at one school, this is up in Gosong, most of the students don't live with their parents. They were living with their grandparents because their parents were away working, or they couldn't take care of their children. Rather sad situations. Or so it's something to be aware of. Try to be aware of family circumstances, and we can't be aware of it unless we know about it, know our audience. Psychological profile. Sometimes this is something we learn over time, the different personalities of individuals. Some groups, some kids, they can't play games because they cannot accept ever losing a game. They have huge fits. And so it's something to learn quickly is, can you play a game with kids or can you not? Something to be aware of. Power and status, just knowing who you're talking to and how you're working with them. Of course, first language. For most of our students, that's going to be Korean, of course. Preferred learning styles. How do they like to learn? You're learning, there's physical learning, audio learning, visual learning, all these tactile learning, all these different ways of learning that you'll need to be aware of. Not everyone responds very well to just listening to a voice for 2 hours. Next, also, their likely attention span. How long can they really pay attention? And give an example. I can't use the word teach, but I work with a 2-year-old boy to help his English. We don't have lessons. A 2-year-old isn't going to sit down and write and listen. They'll play. We'll play games together. We throw balls around and we play with toy trucks and things. That's what we do. And I speak English, and he speaks Korean. So I think he's trying to teach me Korean, but he does absorb. Right now, what he's doing, he's not learning. because he's not trying to learn. He's acquiring, he's absorbing language, he's absorbing sounds. And sometimes he makes fun of me of how I talk, but he does it by mimicking me, which is kind of the point. I'm tricking him into speaking English. Of course, for a 2-year-old, that happens. But we can't do more than 30 minutes because it just you can't do it. When I teach some older boys who are they're only 5 or 6 years old, we're learning how to write and do things. We can't do more than 40 minutes. That's impossible. Their brains would explode. Metaphorically, of course. So that relates to time expectations. How long can we expect to go before breaks? Children, you need breaks. Adults need breaks too. You can't have an 8-hour class, an 8-hour lecture. It's not going to work for anyone. Even 3 hours is too long. But that's why we break things up. And then also the final measure here is how knowledgeable in your subject they are. How much do they know already? And this is always, the moment of panic for me. I never know how much you know. I don't know. I've never seen your English, your high school English efforts. I don't know until you show me something, which is why the introduction videos are so important, because then I can actually see how new students are. Now, some of us we've met before, but again, well, I say met before. We had class before, but I don't really know you, so it's difficult to know how much students know. So that's why we ask these probing questions, these comprehension check questions, to see how much students really know. I have mentioned in EP2, but I'm not teaching that this semester, but in EP2, it's a methodology class. One of the most important questions to never ask a student ever is, do you understand? That question, you will always get a lie. You will get one answer. I say always. 99% of the time you'll get one answer. Can you guess what answer students are almost always going to say? Yes. They're going to say yes. Especially if they don't understand. They're going to say yes. Because nobody wants to be the one stupid idiot who doesn't understand, and everyone's going to make fun of him and call him an idiot. Oh, look at the stupid babo, and it's going to go bad, and they're going to cry. It doesn't matter that nobody else understands too, but they get to point their fingers and laugh at the stupid idiot who actually said yes, who said they don't understand. So I don't ask that question. Do you understand? We ask comprehension check questions. We make sure they understand. They show they understand. And that's part of, say, quizzes, or also with the discussion questions, how you answered tells me how much you understood. And that was very helpful. Another thing to be aware of is how much interest they have in your subject. And with something like English, that's very flexible, because what is English? English is the conveyance, the means of communication. Therefore, English can be taught through anything. Some students like animals. Some students like stories. Some students like Nintendo. Some students like BTS, things like that. So finding out how to present the material to students can be very helpful. And this goes hand in hand with their preferred learning styles, and then also knowing what's the most effective way for them to learn. All right. Next, this one's it's very interesting to be aware of the outside world. For you, the teacher, to be aware of the outside world. What is likely to be on their mind at the moment? Now, I'll give an example, because I'm recording this on Saturday, September 11th. 20 years ago, I was a high school student. And 20 years ago, good Lord. Now, during that time, there was the terrorist attacks on New York City, the World Trade Center. Planes flew in, things like that. So people were very distracted. we couldn't have tests because our brains were elsewhere. We couldn't have normal classes because our mind was thinking about other things. If we have other stresses in our life, other priorities in our life, it's something that's going to distract from our lessons. And give an example. If I make an ICC class lecture that is released on the same day as another of one of your class's midterm test, which one are you going to prioritize? Are you actually going to pay attention to my lecture, or are you going to focus on the test? Despite what some of you might be protesting, I'm going to guess that all of you are going to focus on the test. That is the most efficient use of your time at that moment. And that's something to be aware of. And it's something that I try to work with our projects and tests, to try to stagger them well enough that we don't cause too much stress. All right. So here are some different ways to know our audience. This is, of course, applicable to students, which is our primary concern, but also to adults. You're going to be asked to give presentations, and you'll need to know who they are and who your audience is and what they know, what they don't know. Now, the first one is do your homework. And this seems to make sense. So, understand who you're presenting to. If you're giving for example, a presentation about some research at an academic conference, well, you can assume your audience member knows about basic research methods and about basic statistical analysis. So you can assume a few things about who your audience is going to be depending on the context that you're giving it in. Another thing is how many people will be in your audience. Your lessons will be constructed, built around the number of students. If there's 5 students in your class versus 10 versus 30 versus back in the old days 40 students in a class, then your lesson is going to be different. And you'll need to adjust accordingly. Another thing is being aware of the room itself. How much can you move around? How are the chairs laid out? Now, once you're a permanent teacher, you can adjust that and change the layout. But knowing what your physical space is, you can adjust and change to better match and better serve your lesson, your presentation. Next, getting personal. Spending some time talking with your audience before your presentation, knowing who's who organizes things, know people by their names, people like you using their names. I know it's quite seemingly obvious. Teachers should know students' names. If you have a homeroom, that's that's very obvious. If you're a subject teacher, it'll take you some time to learn students' names, but you need to know their names. You need to learn their names, and you'll learn who they are. Again, it's something that you should develop your skill. I cannot remember numbers at all because I spend so much energy memorizing names. So I can't remember numbers anymore at all. It makes my wife very upset. But I can remember names. So try to make sure that you know your students' names and you can engage with your audience on a more personal level. And I'll include some examples of these, but this is something that's very effective with the audience. Now, this technique, they call it the old Milton Berle technique. Milton Berle was a comedian back in the Chosun Shide. He was, 1,000 years ago. He was a comedian, really about 80 years ago. But his technique, his method was this. He'd go to public appearances. He would do, comedy shows or charity shows or, talks at conferences and conventions. So what he did, he had a handful of diverse material and he'd try different things, try different jokes and see what people responded to. So, it's still, very innocent jokes, topical humor about what's going on, jokes about politicians, about the president. Dark blue. Blue is, dirty jokes, basically. It's a nice word for dirty jokes. And so these are ways of seeing which methods, what kind of material, what vessel, what persona to take on. It's a way of seeing rather quickly what the audience responds to and what they don't respond to. And also, this is nice to know what they know. Know how much the audience knows about what you're talking about. If you speak at too high a level, too high a technical level, whether it be English or math or Korean or history or social studies, they won't understand. That's why we have Professor Krashen brought up the idea of I+1, of the intelligibility factor, and that for language acquisition, the new language has to be one level higher than what the learners already know. So I+1. You can't hit them with very difficult language first. Start low and make it a little more challenging, a little more hard, a little more hard, a little more, a little more, a little more. And over time, they get it. So it's something to know, how much your audience knows, how much your students know. And then, it might, to make sure that you need to, so to speak, dumb it down. Or if they already know everything, you can make it more challenging, more engaging, and more detailed, of knowing how much they know, the audience knows. Again, this goes with our students. This didn't happen to me, but it happened to other other teachers. Again, at Simon Elementary School, there was a group of first graders, and so they divide half the class up for English class into two groups. And in one group, there's about 10 students, and all 10 of them had lived outside of Korea and spoken English outside of Korea for a number of years. So they were all at different levels of fluency, of something closer to communicative or native fluency, every single one. And these are all first graders, though. So you think, oh, they're very low level, but they're not. They're really quite, they talk like American kids or British kids or, at very high levels. But this teacher did not realize that. So he spoke very slowly and he didn't ask probing questions to figure out what the kids knew and what they didn't know. So he just started the lesson going, "My name is David. Nice to meet you." And the little kids are all just laughed because this teacher clearly has a mental problem. So it's something to be aware of. And this one's the most difficult, but it's here. Don't be the star. We're all performers to a degree, but it's important that we include our audience. Don't be overconfident. Make sure that that the material is the star of the show, not you. Nobody's paying money to see you or me, for that matter, talk. They're paying money to learn something. Paying money directly or indirectly by parents and tax dollars. These are 5 methods about, trying to help know who our audience is, and better know how. And knowing this, we can make better lessons and better teach our students and make better presentations ourselves. All right, that is the demographical information that goes into identifying, who your audience is, knowing who your audience is, and it's all very helpful, as you can gather. But the big question is, how does that help? And this next short clip, we saw it last week. It's the the silver-haired man who's very high energy, yelling and screaming. But his point is, what is the customer's underlying need? What does your audience need? What do they want? Now, as teachers, especially with a lack of a better term, a captive audience, as we do with young children, well, they need skills. They need to learn certain things. And we have curriculum, national curriculum set up of what should they learn. And so we know what their needs are. We know what their ultimate goals are from a bureaucratic point of view. But then we'll need to think about what are those, these smaller goals for the individuals or group of students or for your class. What do you want to achieve or have them achieve, be able to do by the end of the year? That's quite important. That's very important to know, to understand, to think about. And something to bear in mind as a teacher, that how are you going to help your students achieve their goals, and especially the goals that maybe they don't even realize that they need, or that they have, rather. So it's something to be fully aware of, and we'll talk about that more later, but it is something that if we can identify and know what our audience, what our students' real goals are, we can help them achieve those goals. When I teach my adult classes with tutoring or other things, it's much easier to vocalize. But a lot of students, they say, oh, I want to speak English. But why? Why do they want to speak English? What really why? Because are they traveling? Are they embarrassed? Do they just want to, do they want to make friends in the class? Is it more of a social event? Which is fine, that happens. That's what a lot of Ajumma classes are. The English is secondary. So if we can know what their underlying goals are, we can help them more and make our lessons better.
Interestingly, let's talk about customer focus. Hey, I want to tell you something. The next guy in your business, the next up, or the next customer in that dealership that walks, you go find out if your sales manager is going up to that salesperson and saying, tell me something, that one that just walked out the door? Yeah, what was that customer's basic fundamental overriding need? I'll work you up. But 95 of 100 salespeople in this industry can't tell you. They have no idea in hell what the customer's needs are. But if he said, oh, the needs for a four-door, the needs for a red car, I'm not talking about need. The guy came through the door because his kid's leaving for college and he's looking for a car that she or he can get there safe. They came in the car because the neighbor bought a car and they're looking for a status or an image. We don't know that. Customer focused in selling says that we identify the customer's needs from the customer's point of view. And it is a sales management responsibility for everyone who walks out that door to say to the salesperson, what was that customer's need? By the way, I even kid General Motors. I've been to every one of the Chevrolet and all of those great, fantastic systems that you got where you're measuring customer satisfaction of the people who bought the car. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to measure customer satisfaction of the people who didn't buy the car.
There we have it, Mr. Don Beveridge, helping out again, asking the big question really is, yes, how do we know what the underlying need, what the goal of our audience is? And that will help us immensely in making the best presentation, making the best speech, and making the best lesson. Now, with students, especially young students, if you ask them what their goal is, they're not going to be able to, visualize or vocalize exactly what's going on. Adult students, they should be able to, and of course, with adult students, you'll also be able to ask deeper questions, not just, for example, English, like, the students want to learn English, but why? What's the actual purpose? Do they work for Samsung? Are they a junior executive at Samsung and they need to get a certain point score on their English test in order to not get fired at the end of the year, which is what happens with junior executives. It's quite cutthroat. So, knowing what the actual need is of our audience, of our students, will help immensely in guiding and preparing the students for what we need them to do and to help them better succeed. So that's what knowing our audience is immensely helpful, and knowing our students is immensely helpful. Now, to change topics just briefly, this last week I asked you to make introduction videos, and it's Saturday night, and I have a few, but I haven't gotten all of them yet. But when I assigned that, the introduction videos, your video production quality was not being graded. Overall, it didn't matter. But in the future of the semester later on, it is going to matter. It is going to matter your camera angles, your camera, your sound quality, as in can you be heard? Your lighting. Lighting is something that we can control. That costs zero money. We just figure it out. So I'm attaching a short video segment that I made earlier, much earlier, and it briefly explains different ideas of cameras and sound, and explains briefly how I go about making video lessons. So hopefully it's helpful to you and helpful in improving our video qualities, and especially because with this semester being mostly online, you're going to be making video projects. That's just the nature of the beast. All right, then let's jump right in to talking about videos. Hello, everyone. This is a short video about making videos and what we can do to help make our videos better, and how they can look better and sound better. Right now I'm talking to you with this camera, but I have this camera set up as well, so you can see how things look differently. And I've got a microphone, but both cameras have microphones as well. So I have 3 recordings going on right now, and we're going to compare each one. How it looks, how it sounds, how the different lighting setups help make things look and sound and feel different. So let's take a brief overview. Now, things to consider. Camera angle. What does the camera see? Now, my main camera, you see my face, you see the back of my chair, you see the general background. But with the GoPro, what do you see? You're looking down on me, and you see all the clutter around me. You see, here's a Monster Energy. Oh, there's still some left. There's a Monster Energy drink here. So, how you place your camera matters a lot. And here are some other examples I have filmed with my cell phone and my iPad.
Versus this. This looks like something.
You can see here how it looks. And another thing to bear in mind: where are you filming? Now, you can see my backdrop here is I'm in a dark room, but if I were to film in front of the window, what would you see? And you can see that here. The window in the back, but light off, we can't see very well at all. Let's talk about lighting. Now, I believe on the GoPro, you can see I use a ring light as my main source of light. It provides nice, even lighting. But what if we were to turn that off and just use the monitor? How does that look? Not very good. So let's bring in some natural light. How does that look? Now, it's looking better. This camera is making it look better, and the GoPro. But how does my face look? Now, the right side of my face is much more in shadow, obviously. It's natural light. We bring that back down and make it halfway. It looks different. It feels different. If we turn on the ceiling light, you can see here, it feels different, and there's a lot of light coming in off my hair. And that mixed with the light from the sun, everything looks a bit different. And we mix that in with the ring light. I look tired. I look a bit sick. I don't look that good. Now, I don't expect you to get a ring light, but I want us to see how things look and feel. This ring light has different settings. This is the regular setting, the white light, and that's how it looks. It's like a bright fluorescent light in my face. It has blue, which looks like a monitor, and very warm light. I like the warm light. I think it looks better for my skin, especially if it's the only source of light, the main source of light. That's how it looks. I think it looks a lot better this way than it does with the other settings. But if you play with your lights, play with and try to figure out what's the best way for you to look, and what looks best for you, you can see and experiment and figure out what's best for you. There's different settings, of course, as well. Now, let's talk about sound. Sound is important. I have 3 recording devices right now, but I'm really just going to use one, the one with the condenser microphone, which you can see. So I'm talking into this. This has a pop filter for those B and P things. How does it sound with just the big camera, the on-camera microphone? Let's give a listen right now. So make sure that when we're talking very clearly with radishes and watermelons and all those wonderful things. Radishes and watermelons, radishes, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish. That's with the DSLR microphone. But what did the GoPro pick up on that? And we can hear the difference. We can hear how it sounds. So make sure that when we're talking very clearly with radishes and watermelons and all those wonderful things. Radishes and watermelons, radishes, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish. Now, one option that I offered to you was using a cell phone to record your audio separately, to use it like a microphone. So let's try this again. Let's compare the cell phone with the different microphones. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey. Watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon, watermelon, radish, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, watermelon, radish, radish, watermelon. Hello, hello. Pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey, pa 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 booey. Editing can help you go from looking like an absolute idiot who's angry and stupid to looking like you know what you're talking about. Just cutting out your mistakes. That's the wonderful thing about video. You might have seen this, if you think about YouTubers. You see YouTubers when they try to go on Twitch and stream, they're not the same. They're not as funny because streaming is a different skill. And so is editing. If you need to edit, and you should edit out your mistakes or your, unfortunate sounds like that. You need to make things better. So when we make videos, especially video lessons, you can try multiple takes. If you have difficulty saying something try again and try again and try again until you're happy with one of them. And then you can choose, the good ones and then use them. If you're making a 15-minute video, then that's a lot of effort. If you're making a 30-second video, yes, you can do that. Perfectly good, perfectly normal, all those wonderful things. It's great. So here are some examples. Oh, actually, here's one short example of a testimonial I did for a company that makes headphone pads and things like that. Anyways, I did that. Here is the final version. The Wicked Cushion earpad covers are a great option if you're like me and you sweat a lot. They come off real easy and they pop on real easy as well. They clean with the... It's not very good, but that's okay. Here's the stuff I cut out. The earpad covers by Wicked Cushion are a real option for you if you're like me and you sweat a lot, but you still like listening. You sweat a lot. The Wicked Cushion... God damn it. The Wicked Cushion earpad covers... The Wicked... Yeah. That happens. So things... Be aware also of sound, how you're recording. Be aware of background noise. What is the microphone picking up? Now, let me just do something real fast and see if it comes in. So I've opened the window. I don't know if you can hear it, but I can hear it. There's cars outside. There's wind. All those things making noise. And that background noise can be annoying for the audience. So try to make it easy for your audience to hear you. All right. Those are some general tips to help us make some videos. In the assignment online, I gave you some free software, open source software that you can use for free. So please take a look and play with those, start playing with them, and hopefully this has been helpful for you, just to provide examples of what can look good and what cannot. All right, thank you. There we have it. Hopefully helpful to you. Hopefully very helpful. It's always embarrassing to go back and take a look at that, and I don't feel very good about it. But I hope you can learn from my experience, which is the entire point of why we're here. Now, this week we talked about knowing your audience, and last week talked about making a point. Next week we're going to talk about refutations, refuting other people's points, and that's something very, very helpful to do, and it's something that requires, there's a basic formula which we'll go over, but it is something very helpful to do in actual conversation and as adults, not just going, you're a stupid poopy head. That doesn't work when you're arguing most of the time. But that'll be a bit more in depth, again, nitty gritty of it. Now, we had the discussion questions on E-Class, which are nice. And then this past week, we had the video introductions, which you are currently still doing. There's still some number of days as of this time of recording, which is now Saturday night. So, and then for this week, week 4, there'll just be another very short attendance checker, so to speak. And I'm going to ask you a question about these videos, and I want you to answer the questions as best you can on eClass, and that will be on there is a voting tab on eClass. I'm going to ask you to use that, and that will count as our participation discussion question of this week. Hopefully you're staying happy and healthy, you're taking care of your vaccinations, and hopefully everyone you love and care about are also A-OK. See you next time.